All right, guys, welcome back to Dissolving Depression. The whole course has brought us to this point. So if we look back over it, we learned what was it that was creating depression. We found out about these faculties that were being used against us, creating the depression, creating unhappiness. We found out how to reclaim those faculties and how to begin to use them for what we wanted to use them for. Now we've spent the last maybe 5 or 6 lessons up to this point looking at some of these extraordinary facets of being a human being. Now we bring it all together for this talk. You are the miracle. That's what we're looking at coming up next. All right, so I want you to imagine a woman who has her house built upon a gold mine. She doesn't know this, but long ago, her home was built upon this gold mine. Now imagine if every morning this woman woke up, drove off of her property on a search for gold. Imagine that situation. That is exactly the situation that we are in. Our home built upon a gold mine, built out of gold even, and every morning we head off looking for gold. Let's take a look at a representation of that. Standing directly upon the very thing we're looking for and never really knowing it. We suffer from this exact same sickness, day in and day out. The miracle is so close that we never actually see it. You know, you might have heard scientists talk about the quest to find intelligent life out there in the universe. Isn't it already here? Isn't there already intelligent life right here on this planet? Why do we need to go find another instance of it? Shouldn't this be miracle enough? Shouldn't this be evidence enough that there's intelligent life out there in the universe? This is what I mean. It's already right there in front of them. For some reason, they don't see this instance of it, but want to go search for it. The miracle is so close that it never dawns on us to pause and study it. You are the miracle. I'm the miracle. We are the miracle. And I know that word is loaded. If my wife were here, she would probably be telling me, don't use that word, use a different word. But it's the right use of the word. I mean, unfortunately, it's been used for other things like miracle whip, miracle aid, miracle everything. You are the real miracle. You are the real treasure. You know, what I showed before, this image here, this doesn't quite capture it. Because it's even closer than this. The real representation would be something more along the lines of this. That you yourself are the treasure. You know, we go out shopping looking for treasures. We don't realize that what we are is the most extraordinary treasure there is. And we're going to look at that because we've been looking at it these last 5 or 6 lessons. I want to go through the proof that we've gathered up to this point. And I think I should change that word because it isn't that I'm trying to prove this to you. I'm just sharing with you things that when you start to see them, completely change the way you view your own life. Where it seemed like you were alone and abandoned and isolated and without any kind of guidance, these things that we've looked at over the last few talks and that we're going to summarize here in the points ahead, these things show that it's an entirely different story, that we're not alone, we're not isolated, we're not here without guidance. So the first thing we looked at, that we are here as this incredible organism that has faculties that operate on their own, and that they do so, or they are intended to operate on our behalf for us. Things like thinking, imagination, the ability for me to speak this sentence without having to actually make any effort at all to choose this word and then this word and then this word, that these faculties operate with their own governing intelligence. That's already a hint at the miracle of being a human being. And we had a few examples of this. We talked about how if you watch yourself very closely when you're reading a book, what has always seemed like you using your own faculties to piece together what the author has written with those words, construct a meaning out of it, and then draw from that whatever the gold nuggets are, we said that that's not really what's happening at all, that there are faculties that are reading that book for you as you hold yourself there in front of that book. That you don't have to sit there and reason out how this all fits together. You don't have to call on some kind of intelligence of your own to try to figure out what is the author saying. This is all brought together for us. The book is read for us. And this is one of those things where you have to study this to find this out. You have to look at what it's like when you're reading a book and begin to ask yourself some questions. What am I doing right now to assemble the meaning that I'm experiencing as I read these words? Wow, I thought I was responsible for all of it. I don't think I'm not doing very much at all. And then go as deep as you want asking those questions about that. Well, how about the body? We talked about how the body has its own governing intelligence, and that it carries out through its own intelligence whatever requests we make of it, whether it's get up out of this chair, or do you remember the gymnast and the coach who was there with one primary directive? I will protect this gymnast at all costs. She is not going to hit that ground, not on my watch. And do you remember what the coach did in order to keep that girl protected? Let's look at that again.
Off as a routine warm-up on the uneven bars. The 11-year-old gymnast does a handstand split on the high bar. Suddenly, her hands slip. That's when her coach steps in and catches her a split second before she hits the mat.
Do you think there was a man there who was orchestrating that?
Amazing save.
Or did his one principle
Now the coach is being
become the directive of his body to not let this other being hit the ground? And then the body did anything it needed to do in order to make that happen. So that's our faculties operating on their own, on our behalf. Again, we're looking at the miracle of being a human being, that you yourself are the miracle. What about this extraordinary ability that we have to penetrate into any subject that we want to know about, to penetrate into the heart of that thing? And we looked at this, how if you bring your attention to something, and remember, we did it with a plant early on, we can do it again just to remind ourselves. We said that if you bring your attention to that plant and really look at it, you begin to discover things about it that you had never known before. Let me see if I can get that focus to work better. All right, let's see if we can switch cameras and get it a little bit better for you. There we go. I bring my attention to something, And suddenly the whole of what that thing begins to open up to me. I discover world upon world that I'd been passing by my entire life. And this is just the beginning of things. We start with things like that. Then we take it into a topic, a condition, a challenge, a limitation that we want to know about, and we bring ourselves to that. What is the nature of fear? And I stay with it. And initially, remember we did some journaling. We looked at what it's like to climb the mountain, and we were simulating what it's like to journal, to start with one idea. What is the nature of fear? And then I sit there and I wait, and something will eventually come to me. One little thing that I can see beyond my present point where I'm standing, I see, well, fear always has me at the center of the picture. And little by little, I actually find my way into the center of what fear is. You can do this. All of us can do this. You have this ability. And so we have this ability to penetrate into things that we would have thought were completely shut off to us, which I've got a representation of this. If the thing we're trying to know is represented by this iron room, and there are no doors into it, but we want to find our way into the center of this room, if we keep ourselves there with that sincere wish, eventually what we are changes, and we fall right into the center of that room. We fall right into the center of that limitation that we want to know about, or anything else. So as a human being, you're created with this ability to penetrate into the heart of anything you want to know about. What about this urge to find meaning that we were born with? You know, we didn't acquire this from the people around us. We didn't sit up one day and decide, I'm going to want to pursue meaning. I think that's what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. We are here serving this urge to find meaning, to find a kind of ever-renewing source of meaning in our lives. And we didn't give this to ourselves. And so remember, it would take us to the theater performances, where we would show up to watch these stories unfold so that we could feel the meaning produced by these principles that all of these stories were based upon. And how everything we do in life is the pursuit of these principles. It's a kind of worship of these principles. We want to go out and experience companionship, friendship, love, courage, tenaciousness, vitality, anything at all that you can name. This is a part of the human pursuit of meaning. And we didn't give it to ourselves. And equally important, that those principles that we saw playing out up there on the stage, well, first of all, we didn't realize that's what we were watching, but that is really what we were watching. But we also realized that those principles that we seem to show up and watch play out in front of us on that stage, that they're actually within us. And it's those circumstances up there on the stage, or the circumstances of our own life, that bring these principles to the forefront for us to feel them and experience them, that they're already within us. Which, by the way, makes us the perfect complement to the whole of this life that we're in. That you can put us anywhere, put us in a coffee shop, put us in a restaurant, put us in a doctor's office. And those, whatever those circumstances are, some set of principles will come to the forefront to be experienced without fail. This is what we are. All of us already loaded with these principles. And all we really do our entire life is move ourselves into the proximity of different circumstances that bring different principles to the forefront within us to be experienced. What about when we looked at how a human being is the point where life impressions and the energy of life itself get converted into meaning? Do you remember we had the image of the candle? And we were saying that this metaphor, this candle, and the flame in particular, is a perfect metaphor, a perfect analogy for what a human being is. That flame represents me and you, this witnessing capacity within us that is able to watch these moments unfold and then feel the meaning that they are transformed into. In the same way that this candle provides a fuel source, and how that flame is constantly converting that fuel and the air that's meeting it into warmth and into light. That in the exact same way, everything that we are in a given moment, everything that you are right now, your entire past, things that have gone unreconciled, hopes, dreams, all of it is the fuel. And the impression coming into you right now, from this talk even, this impression strikes everything that you are, and that flame that burns, this awareness, this witnessing, transforms what you are and those incoming impressions into new meaning, into new revelations. And again, this is something that you can prove for yourself right now. And not just prove it for yourself, that you have to prove it for yourself, that you can't just accept this. And remember, another part that we talked about relative to this metaphor is how that flame doesn't really have an independent existence apart from everything that's coming together in that moment. You can't take that flame off of the wick and set it over on the table. It is something that lives inseparably from this dynamic that takes place, where this stored up fuel meets a heat source and the incoming air and the whole thing gets converted into this light and this warmth. That we are just like that flame, constantly moving, constantly shifting. And yet the flame, even though it's being made and remade moment to moment to moment, it remains as a kind of constancy. And so we talked about this witness within that witnesses everything taking place in our life, and that it outlives individual moments. Relationships come and go. But this witnessing part of us, if we're not caught up, identified with that relationship, where it seems like, oh, finally my ship has arrived, I've met this person. And then when they suddenly walk out on me, my ship has sunk and I'm going down with the ship. That this witnessing part of us is real safety, because it can take part in that relationship when it shows up. But because its life is founded upon something timeless, something permanent, real principles, not momentary experiences, these real principles, because its life is founded there, it can welcome that relationship in, it can enjoy it, and if the relationship dissolves, it remains. It has constancy. It truly is timeless. It's not aging. You know, I have a picture from when I was younger. I think I was, 5 or 6 years old in this picture. I was a big cat lover I'm still a big cat lover. I can remember around this same time frame, we had a family emergency. And I remember being in our front yard on the sidewalk watching our van. Our family was taking a family member to the hospital. And I distinctly remember, now I didn't know it at the time back then when I was 5 years old, but looking back on it, I remember that there was something that was present in that moment, and it is the exact same presence that's in my life today. It wasn't a 5-year-old presence back then, and now it's a 49-year-old presence. It is something that does not age. And again, this is one of those things that you can't just take on face value because I'm saying it. You can make this discovery yourself. And remember, we talked about that a human being is this kind of sensing being that can actually study its own experience and learn from it and see into it. And remember, we talked about feng shui. You know, when somebody asks you, do you like the room arranged like this or like that? They said, here's the way I want to make it. And do you like it like this or do you like it like this better? And we said you use this, you rely upon this interior listening. So you're looking at your physical experience, at your physical surroundings, but you're listening intently to your internal experience. And you're listening for distinctions, you're listening for disparities, differences, where something is able to pronounce for you, make the assessment that, oh, I definitely like it this way better. Well, that same kind of listening is what we use to put these things to the test. Only now, it isn't that you're using your outer physical experiences like this room. You're using your internal experience and you're listening to that. So for example, when you work to be present, you can then test this and find out, is this presence something connected to my age? Is it 49 years old? And you might be able to remember a moment of lucidity, of this clear perception that you had from when you were younger. And you'll be able to look at the two of them and find out, was one 7 years old and the other one is 49? Or was it the exact same quality? Now you have to go find it out. If I say it was the exact same quality, what good is that? You have to go find out. Is it aging or is it timeless? How about this? Remember when we talked about that each one of us, as we go through this life and we learn these lessons, that we ourselves are the teacher, the student, and the subject matter that's being taught. So we looked at this picture. And we were saying that you, in any moment where you have an aha moment, that all three of these are within you. Even if you're being taught by somebody externally, in that moment of real learning, where you make some discovery, this whole dynamic is taking place within you. There is a student. That should be easy to see. That's the part of you that needs to know something, wants to know something, is interested in finding something out. That's the student. That's part of the nature of what you are. It's part of your human consciousness. There is also the subject matter. Now, the subject matter can seem like it's coming from outside of you. It really isn't. For example, let's say you want to learn something about fear, like we looked at a little bit earlier. Every discovery that you make, you are making inside yourself. You're making that discovery within you. You're finding this relationship of what fear is. You're finding that within your own consciousness. Even if you're reading it in a book, the moment of having the aha, you're seeing that relationship within what you are. So you are the subject matter. And then the teacher in that moment that makes this all happen. Again, you have to use that quality of quiet, earnest listening to find out how does the teaching actually happen? And you'll see that there is this force, this directive that wants to instruct, and you'll find it's happening within you. Not from the teacher out there. The teacher out there just sets things up for us, gets us looking in a certain direction. But when that aha moment happens, it's the teacher within instructing the student within about the subject matter that is within. So again, we're looking at this miracle of being a human being. We're looking at the evidence. We also looked at how each one of us is placed here with an element of free will, and yet at the same time being bound to certain laws. And what I mean by that is, we come here born into this life. This body is born here, and we find here we are inside this body. And life lets us go explore in whatever way we want to, this element of free will. Now, even that exploration is governed by certain principles and laws, but there is an aspect of free will that is in the center of the human being. It isn't nearly as all-encompassing as most people think, that because I can get up and decide to go get an ice cream out of the refrigerator, that's my free will. Not quite. But there's a tiny aspect of free will in it. But what we were saying is, we try everything. We go out and we try to give ourselves anything we can and everything we can to make ourselves content and happy. Do you remember those pictures? So we bring ourselves the car, we bring ourselves the relationship, we bring ourselves the money, even the new business. And what we were saying is that for some reason we still find that we have this feeling of emptiness. Something is still missing. And so this is where these laws come in. Because this greater life has a use for us, has a purpose for us. And if we're not fulfilling that purpose, we don't feel that contentment. And so what we said is that it isn't really that we're serving these things up to ourselves. That's what it feels like at first. In reality, we're serving them up to this greater life that has this purpose for us. And the reason that so many of these things end up not fulfilling us is that they're just circumstances in life, physical circumstances in a certain regard, whether it's the money or the business or the relationship, the car. And so part of the miracle of being a human being is that this communication is literally happening between this greater life and what we are. And it happens in the form of discontentment and contentment. When we are serving this purpose the way we're intended, whatever that might be, we feel contentment flowing through us. When our best efforts are off the mark, not at all what this greater life wants us to be giving ourselves to, we end up feeling discontentment. And what we were seeing was that the discontentment is connected to this nonstop pursuit of new experiences, of possessions, of people, really of putting myself at the center of life. And we found out that contentment begins to appear. Remember the prism of virtue? We said that contentment begins to appear when we are just working to be present to the moment that we are in. Not trying to hoard things away for ourselves, keep this all for myself, or put myself at the center of the moment. But when we're just working to be present, it's a kind of focusing, a kind of attunement. And just working to be present in our lives attracts this light of awareness. It finds it immediately. And it shoots right through that presence and splits out into all of these virtues. But the main takeaway here is that all of this is being governed by this communication through contentment and discontentment. We don't give ourselves these things, and yet here they are communicating to us, letting us know, no, don't go in this way. Go away from that direction. Go away from that direction. Oh, there you go. Now you're right on when that contentment is flowing through. So we have something that is communicating with us, helping us find and fulfill that real purpose. We talked about humanity being all one, that we're all droplets from that ocean. All droplets from that same ocean of humanity, and all of us imbued with the same constituent components of that ocean. Here to have the same lessons, the same principles within us. All of us having the same the same qualities, the same aspects, the same parts of our character, but to differ in degrees, because we're here for a different set of unique lessons. The lesson plan is the same for all of us, but we have our unique ways of going through those lessons. And that was the other part of this. Finding out that we're all here, reading this exact same book of life. Same lessons, regardless of our circumstances, ultimately having the exact same lessons, the exact same revelations, worshiping the same kind of beauty, the same principles, the same strengths. I have this insurmountable project that I have to tackle, but I stick with it and learn a lesson about perseverance. My friend going through a difficult relationship, issue in their relationship, but he sticks it out and ends up learning the exact same lesson about perseverance. So what is all of this saying? You know, we started this talk, the title of it, You Are the Miracle. Are you beginning to get the sense for that in everything that we've looked at? These faculties that operate on their own? This ability to penetrate into anything we want to know about? This urge to find meaning that we didn't give ourselves, but we are down here having to serve it, and joyfully so. You know, you find another new insight in this course maybe, and it's a delight to find new insight. I love finding new meaning. Actually realizing that I'm this place where the impressions of the moment are converted into meaning. You know, it can be as simple as just pausing for a moment and feeling what the atmosphere of the room that you're in is like. Is it dark? Is it light? Is it uplifting? Maybe it's full of clutter And so it feels kind of heavy. It feels like it's kind of diffusing all of your energy. That's what clutter does. But see, you are that point where that incoming impression of what your room is physically, where you can see it all around you, you're the point where that impression comes in and then converts into this feeling of an atmosphere. That's what it means to be converting impressions into meaning. So all of these, and there's so many more that we went through. What is it saying? What is it hinting at? These faculties operating on their own, under their own intelligence, but on my behalf. This urge to find meaning. This communication in the form of contentment and discontentment when I'm on the mark or off the mark. It means that we are here serving as the connection between worlds. Isn't that what you would call it? Where, let's say you've had a limitation your entire life, or a good portion of your life. Just, I cannot commit to a relationship. I just can't do it. I don't know what it is. Everything in me is terrified of this. And then you work with these ideas and you realize, wow, that inability to commit was actually being created by this movie projector in my mind that had become identified with being somebody who isn't tied down, someone who is completely independent, and that you didn't have to live in that theater anymore. And in that moment, this limitation was transformed. And you were the point where it happened. You were the point where this world of limitation was met by a higher world, was met by an insight, a principle that completely changed it. So it was something like this. You are this place where this greater world is changing this lower world. This is really what we are as human beings. Now, this is a representation, of course. I just have to represent it. But you will be able to feel all of this unfolding within you. Any new insight that happens within you is this very activity taking place. Now, what's incredible about all of this is there are moments where this happens in our life accidentally. And you can sort of see two little lightning bolts touching the shoulders of the little man to represent little taps on the shoulders. There are moments where this happens accidentally. We suddenly see that we had been hurting somebody our whole life, and we have this moment of remorse, and we really are changed by that. But you have the ability to be the conscious connection between these worlds, where you keep these things plugged in. And how do you do that? By being present to your life, by working to understand the things in this course, and then bringing them into your life and testing them out. A human being is an amazing thing. It is the miracle of miracles. Now, to find this out, of course, it's all about this art of listening. To be able to be present to the moment, listen to my experience, study the nature of what I am. all of these big questions get answered that way. Now, doesn't it make sense that up to this point, life would have been dominated by sadness, depression, discontent, unhappiness? Because I didn't have any idea all of these things were a part of what I am. So we started with understanding what creates depression, and now we're looking at the deeper mysteries of what it is to be a human being. And I didn't know either one of them up to this point, right? So there was virtually no choice until now. See, we got tricked. Let's go to the overhead camera. We got tricked by a world that taught us through its very being, everything in it taught us this. To look for happiness, look for meaning out here. It's out here somewhere. It's out here in the world around you. This is where you find it. And it turns out you have to look here. You have to look here. That's where it's found. Instead of looking for happiness out there in circumstances, in conditions, in the world around me, or how about in the theater of my mind? We better bring that up. Here's that theater of the mind where we go to relive problems, or where we go to relive pleasurable moments. And in either case, living inside of a closed-in theater where no new life is getting in. And remember, we talked about the only sane thing to do in this situation is to exit that theater. Find that exit. Get out of there, back out into real life. But this is what we've gotten tricked into doing. I mean, we've seen people caught in this pattern our whole lives. People who just are irritated the entire evening because of what happened at work. Without knowing it, they were teaching their kids how to live inside the theater, to just ruminate, think about what went wrong, remain attached to that thing that happened, the way I was treated. So imagine being this point, like we've talked about in these examples, being this point where the universe, this greater life, call it God, call it truth, where it's comprehending itself, where it is enjoying itself through you, through the process of revelation and meaning, contentment, all of these things that we experience. Imagine being the place where that is taking place, but instead of taking part in any of that, just getting used to long for another person, long for another car, feel bad about what somebody said to me, and to be shut out of that entire mystery and miracle of what you really are. So right now, as you're watching this, there are billions of men and women out there who are this extraordinary miracle, but they have no idea. Just like you and me, created as this point where the impressions of life are converted into meaning, but because they have no understanding of that, and they're raised in a world that has no understanding of that, their life looks something like this. It's going to be another fight tonight. Or, instead of that, it's feeling like I've been tossed out of the inner circle. And all of us know what this is like. You have the ability to be one of the few who actually finds something different in this life. That's what this whole course has been about. You are the miracle, already in possession of this breathtaking purpose. You're already free, you're already home. Already at the place where all of this happens. Now, I know somebody hears that and there's the objection of, well, that's not true. Because I'm definitely struggling with this depression or whatever that internal feeling might be. So I'm not free, I'm not home. But you have to remember, that depression is a byproduct of misunderstanding. It's produced through misunderstanding. And so when it's present, those feelings, they can obscure what you are, but they don't change what you are. You are still this point where all of this is happening. And the only reason that depression could accumulate like that and become this impediment was that I didn't know what created depression, and B, I didn't know that I had all of these faculties that could be used against me if I wasn't watching over them. Now we know about that. And C, I didn't know about these deeper aspects of what I actually am and what I'm here for. And so it was easy to obscure, conceal the miracle of what you are behind that depression. Now, this doesn't mean that you are, as you work through this course, that you are becoming free. You already are, and part of that freedom is now discovering the illusion that all of this depression has been built upon. That feeling of captivity and depression itself is a feeling and a thought activated by this process of identification, of laying claim to this or that, saying, this is who I am. I hope I don't have to be this. And you can walk out of that entire world. Remember all of these things that crop up like this. These sudden feelings, these sudden thoughts. They just pop out of the book of our personal past. They're one of these things that simply get animated by what's happening in the moment around us. You don't have to take any kind of action at all relative to these things. You don't have to do anything with them. At this point, you now have everything you need to dissolve this depression. You know what creates it. If you've been through the whole course, you know what creates it. You know about these faculties that have been operating on their own, for example, that have you living inside that theater of the mind. You know how to reclaim those faculties, how to regain command over them and use them for what you want to use them for. And now you know about these deeper aspects, what it really means to be a human being, what you're really here for. This is what can dissolve depression. This is what dissolved this depression for me. So I would remind you about the last talk where we said, cast your concerns over any momentary feeling, any concerns for what's happened in the past. Kick those things to the curb and go out and begin bringing all of this into your moment-to-moment experience. Put it all to the test. Experiment with stepping off of center stage and letting somebody else stand directly on center stage and celebrate what they are, what they've done. And then bring into everything that you do, as often as you can remember, the remembrance of something has actually placed me here with a purpose. It's placed all of us here with this purpose. It isn't that mine is unique from this person. This one is meant to be a coffee shop owner, and this one's meant to be a business person, and this one is meant to be an elite athlete. No, there's this common person, this common purpose is upstream of all of that. And we all share it in common. Bring those remembrances into your moment-to-moment experience as well. Well, before this course wraps up, we're going to look at a few more things that are going to help you bring all of this into fruition. One of the next lessons, in fact, the very next lesson, we're going to be looking at meditation, silence, prayer, and worship, and how that plays into all of this. All right, so we'll see you in that lesson.